Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today it's time for my 7th video in my Beginning Gardener series. Now, in the past videos, we talked about site selection, how to know exactly where to site your garden beds. And I'm hoping that you've had the ability to go out and do that and choose a spot for your gardens. Now we need to move on to discussing what type of garden beds you want to design. Now, there's two different ways to do garden beds that we're going to discuss in this video series. And one is in-ground gardening, and the second is raised beds. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of raised beds and what type of beds there are out there. Now that you've had a chance to go through and look at your garden site and figure out what your soil is like, what your different conditions are like, it'll be easier for you to decide which will work best for you. Let me once again show you my gardens and show you why I decided to go with raised beds. Now, in the last video, we showed you under my deck and showed you what my garden soil actually looks like. There's a lot of rock, there's a lot of clay, and there's several different layers of soil. And if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, I'll just link that video up above so you can see that. So I decided I needed to go with garden beds. Let me show you another reason why I decided to do raised beds. Now, it may be difficult to tell on the video, but this is a pretty steep slope. And when I first moved into this house 15 years ago, this was the main open space, and it was the best place situated for garden beds. And when I looked at sun exposure, this was the best place to put my garden beds. It was also a really good place because of the irrigation setup. All of the spray heads that were on this hill, it used to be grass, were on one zone, and so I was able to put my garden beds on that zone. The only issue with this area was the slope. Now, the slope was going to make it really difficult to put regular garden beds in here because the water would just run down the hill and not stay in the beds. So that's why I decided at the very beginning to go with raised garden beds. Now, the raised garden beds also made it possible for me to avoid the rocky soil and several different layers by putting in my own choice of raised garden bed mix. Now, we will talk about raised garden bed soil mixes later on in the series, but right now we just wanted to talk about the structures. Now, I thought a lot about what I wanted to use for materials for my raised garden beds, and I decided to go with these blocks. First reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted it to last a long time and didn't want to have to replace it. The next reason was because I liked the look of it. The raised block beds were also easier to situate on my hill. I just dug into the hill on one side, so they were completely level with the soil there. And then the other side was placed right on top of the soil. Now you can kind of see that some of the blocks have sunk a little bit and they are tilted, and some of them aren't. Some of them did not do that. But even though they're tilted, they're holding the soil in, they're holding the water in, and they're working beautifully. What I can do is go back in and shovel some more soil under these blocks to make them straight if I wanted to. Now, another thing I liked about these block beds is they gave me options for increasing the height if I wanted to. Most of the beds on my hillside are just 1 block high, but the ones that I built down here are 2 blocks high, and I can make them as tall as I want. All I need to do is just add another layer of blocks. So they're long lasting, I think they're attractive, they're easy to build without tools, and we can increase the height if we wanted to. The one drawback of these beds is the expense, but when you figure in that you don't have to replace these, I think the cost is worth it. So I really like my block beds, but last year I decided to try a different type of bed. I saw a lot of different metal beds advertised on Facebook, and a lot of different people were using them. And then I saw a really good sale on Veggies raised metal beds, and I decided to trial one of those beds. So this one right here is the first one that I did, and I'll link a video on how I built that. And I liked it so much that I got another bed, and then I decided to become an affiliate. So I'll link a code down below so you can get 10% off if you want to try the raised metal beds. I have really been impressed with them. They're easy to put together, and they really do a great job. Now, one of the things that I heard about raised metal beds that I found is not true is that they heat up and hurt the plants because it heats the soil up too much. But I have not found that to be an issue, even on the south side of this house where it's the hottest area in my yard. Now, I found, especially if you take advantage of the sales on these raised metal beds, that the cost is just about the same as doing one of my block beds. They also come in different shapes and different heights. So these are the ones that I bought are the 17-inch raised metal beds, because the 36-inch seemed a little too tall for me and the 8-inch was too low. So I really like the height of the 17-inch metal beds. These right here are all exactly the same kit. I just made these 8 feet long and 2 feet wide instead of 3 3/4 feet wide and 6.5 feet long, something like that. You can look on the website and see what the dimensions are on that. But I will make a video later in these series where I go through how I put these together and how I'm going to fill them. As you can see right now is not the time to be filling raised metal beds or building garden beds. It's a little too cold and a little too snowy. But you can see kind of what it looks like. They've got braces, and what I love about the Veggies metal beds is they do only have 4 screws on each panel. The other beds that I've seen have something like 6 screws, so this one is a little quicker to put together. Now, the most popular way of doing raised beds is using wood. And I am not a carpenter, I don't have the tools, so I did not opt for making wood beds, but there are a lot of them that are really gorgeous. You can go to garden centers and purchase pre-made ones and just put them together at your house, or you can design your own and put those together. And there's a lot of really great videos online on how to build raised beds out of wood. And I think those are just as good as the ones that I have. The only issue is if you don't use pressure-treated lumber, you may end up needing to replace them every few years or so. And also the price of wood has increased quite a bit, so they are also a little bit more expensive. In my next video, we'll go over in-ground beds and the pros and cons for those. And I will link down below videos of how I built my block beds and how I built my raised metal beds, so that you can kind of see the process I went through on building those. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. I hope you like and subscribe, and share some comments down below and let me know what type of beds you're using in your garden. Are you gardening in ground? Are you using raised metal beds? What are the pros and cons you see of each? I would love to hear that. And I hope you go have a wonderful garden adventure.